So be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Juntera, and Cassie is at Coach_Cassie RB, as in running back, but RB. Yeah, for me, and again, I'm not trying to compare myself to you. I did make a couple of visits, and I didn't decide until the fall of my senior year.
Mhm.
I had some apprehension about going too far away. That was just, I can admit that now, many years later. But for you, was there any apprehension? I know you just described your experience with Alabama, but there was that Penn State factor there, and you
Right.
knew, hey, big football school, beautiful softball field. I actually played on their baseball field, so I know a little bit about their athletic
Mhm.
complex, and I'm comfortable in saying that they have beautiful facilities. Was there still that pull maybe to stay a little bit closer to home, or was Alabama just a slam dunk?
I think when I thought of, there's still this like to the back of my head because
Mm-hmm.
before any happened, I was 12 and my parents had actually just gotten married, and I was
Mm-hmm.
watching the World Series, and I looked at the two of them and I said, I think I want to play there one day,
Mm-hmm.
and that was what they took my dream and just like not never pushed, but just said, how can we help this grow? And not that I felt
Yeah.
like I owed anything to them, but in the back of my head, I just thought, if I'm actually capable of achieving that, how can I
Mm-hmm.
not go to Alabama? And I really thought that was going to be my best chance at making it to the World Series and potentially winning a national championship. And again, that wasn't the end all be all. That's not how I'd made 100% of my decision, but I just felt like the rest of my life I would have been wondering, well, what if you did do that? And I there was no other school that I had a what if with.
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to be able to, even if I went for it and failed miserably, I at least would have been able to sleep at night the rest of my life knowing I went for it. So
What was one school that was a little bit smaller that was in the running?
so Stanford had like only 8,000 people. That was, if I
Wow.
had to pick my like criteria for a perfect school, I wanted high academics, really
Mm-hmm.
competitive softball, and they had that. They had a phenomenal program.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I think I was like, all right, if I'm going a plane away, what does it matter if it's 6 hours or 3 hours? But
Yeah.
I mean, how could you say? I really started to kick myself. Where talk about opportunity, I'm like, okay, well, do I say no to this academic opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
But when I had went, I realized that wasn't going to be the place I was going to be able to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
I just knew there was a potential version of myself that existed, and I just was trying to figure out where I could go to help fill that gap. And I'm glad I made the decision I did, because there was a lot of people that said you're insane for not going to Stanford.
And what I'm just curious, what people were those?
Oh, aunts, uncles, friends of the family, like other,
The extended family. They always think they know everything.
well, you know what? And it's funny too, because like news spread. So it'd be like parents of athletes that I played against that they were like, I hear
Yeah.
you're trying to make a decision. Let me give you my 2 cents.
Right. Right. Yeah.
uh,
They're in your shoes. Now,
yep.
well, and we'll get to just the recruitment in 2022 and beyond, and what it's like now for all
Right.
athletes. We will get to that, but I want to touch on this point. After you signed with Alabama and you were geared up, ready to go, what was the rest of your high school career like for you, both academically and athletically, knowing that you had a place to go?
You know what's interesting, and I'm so glad I experienced this, because I thought it was going to be this like, oh, okay, here's a relief. That's one less thing I have to worry about. But it
Mhm.
was, yes, you did experience that in one sense, but now every time you step to the plate, you were the girl going to Alabama.
Right.
And if you ever got out, if you ever didn't have a good game, like it was just, it felt, I'm so glad I had really good parents and really good coaches in my life to help guide me then, because
Mhm.
that could have been consuming. And I think it
Yeah.
does, that pressure, they rank players now in every class. And
Yeah.
if I coach a girl who's ranked number 4 in the country, she's like, yeah, I feel that. Like if I ever swing and miss, it's like they celebrate like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's about keeping your blinders on and focusing on, okay, what's important now, and leaving the rest of the wayside. But that was really how my senior year went from a playing standpoint. As far as training, I still remember, I mean, people people would die to have something like that to train for. Like when you're struggling to eat right and you're like, well, what's your why? I'm going to the University of Alabama to play softball. That's my why. Like when you're struggling to get out of bed to condition, like what better why could you have? So there was, motivation is like this drug for some people because it's fleeting and you need more of it. But that was all I needed. And so I felt like I was in the best shape of my life. I felt like I was the most disciplined I had ever been. And I just, I used to talk with my dad about how hard we want to push the gas pedal. And like, if anything, he was trying to help me make sure I wasn't wearing myself too thin before we get there. But that was, I still remember that year, just how geared up I was to start with that team.
There was a time in 2006 when I was a sophomore and I was playing against a kid. His name was Billy Rowell. I don't know if you know that name. He was drafted by the Orioles, 9th overall in 2006. I'm playing first base, and he's a left-handed batter. And he hits one at me so hard that if I did not put my glove up to my face, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. That's how hard he hit it. This was the days before the exit velocity craze. Nevertheless, Billy Rowell was signed to play college baseball before getting drafted at the University of Alabama. And every single time he went to the plate, people were rooting against him. And every single time he swung and missed, there was a huge cheer. And every time he swung and missed and struck out, there was even a bigger cheer. So I understand, at least from a peripheral, what you mean about that added pressure for you when you go up to the plate every single time. And there's a lot of people rooting against you because of where you're going to school.
Right. Yeah. And it's like I said, I think social media probably would magnify it. Like we talk about differences now and then. The biggest thing that you had was a newspaper article that would get posted after the game. And you know what? I think the worst thing I had to deal with was I got walked 3 times in a game, and someone published the headline of Reilly-Boccia goes hitless against. I was like, come on.
Right. Go 0 for 2 with a walk. Yeah.
Or not even. I was 0 for 0 with 3 walks, and the headline was I went hitless. And I just realized I was like, that is such a perception that has nothing to do with me. Like you talk about what you can control, but I do think, I think how difficult it is for kids right now where they don't have just one headline in a local newspaper. It is something that's blasted on Twitter, something that's commented on Twitter, commented on forums, commented on, I'm so thankful I didn't have to deal with that because I got to just go home and not worry about it, be with my family, or go train with my coaches. And that's good. I think that was healthy for me at the time.
And with all this attention that you got, I'm assuming, I didn't ask this earlier, but I'm assuming, I wrote it down here, I should have asked it earlier, but I'm assuming that you picked up all conference, all state, that's where it stopped for me. So all region, were you all American?
I was not. Yeah, I don't know what the All-American, what it was like for high school at that time. It was never an All-American, but all state, all section, all league.
Okay. Yeah. And you were one of the, I guess, best players in your area, and one of the names that went on to play at a top school, right? There were other names as well? You mentioned one last week, but
yeah. So funny enough, that Section 1 softball in this time period, we ended up with Allie Gardner, who started off at UNC Wilmington, transferred to the University of Florida.
Okay.
Maddie Kuhn went to Stanford. Tammy Ray, LSU. Kirby Wright, Nebraska. Casey O'Connor, Notre Dame. All playing each other around the same time, and in the same county, and that was like unheard of for our area. So I remember going to Alabama and being like, "This is it. This is going to be like Northeast is going to make it now because like look at all these names," and then it just
right,
it's like a weird hotbed of athletes. And funny enough, a lot of those names I just mentioned, we got to train together with so my hitting coach at the time, I think really got a name for himself because he was sending these girls to big time schools out of the area. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I think honestly, that probably took pressure off of all of us because spotlight was shared in a good way,
Yeah. But there has to be that mindset there that, okay, you look around at your peers, no disrespect to them, but you're saying, well, they're not really, I'm not saying you're saying this, maybe you are. I would have been. I was, because I was a D1 recruit. They're not really on my level. I'm looking at going after the big dogs, You know, you mentioned the gal who went to LSU, Maddie Kuhn. I remember Maddie because she was mentioned on last week's show, and the other gal who went to I don't know, where was the other school? UNC
Notre Dame,
Wilmington.
Nebraska,
No,
Florida.
yeah,
Yeah.
Florida. You have to be. You're looking at them, right, and saying, okay, they're my competition because that's who I'm going to see the most at the next level.
Yeah, and it's funny. None of them were pitchers in college, so I always used to view a pitcher as someone I would be like, nah, I'm going after you.
Yeah.
And another hitter was just, I'm like, all right, I don't have to deal with you, right? You know what I mean? So
Right.
It was more. I loved travel ball at the time. I would every single time I'd go play, someone would be like, oh, this pitcher is going to go play at UCLA next year. This pitcher is going to go play at Arizona, and I was like, nice. That's the one I want to be up against, right? Like I want to see you because I always, even if I struck out, even if I didn't do well then, I always felt like every time I saw a pitch from a pitcher, it was just putting tipping the scales in my favor. Every pitch was just tipping. I was going to be able to get a better advantage. So at least at the time, that was my mentality. And I don't know if I actually looked at those girls as my competition.
Yeah. I guess it's different for guys. I don't know why.
Maybe, yeah. No, you're right. Because like if anything, girls are like very, very, very supportive, and it's overwhelming majority of the time. The guys in our facility are overly confident, and their confidence is here and their abilities here. And girls, it's the opposite. Their abilities here and their confidence is down here. So it's I think. It is an interesting dynamic, especially for a high school female and male.
Yeah, I've talked about it on my other podcast too with Jake Epstein, the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast, about how baseball dads, and there's some parodies out there on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen any, but of baseball dads, baseball coaches of kids coming up, it's just this aggression to it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's seems like there's a different type of aggression with women, and seems to travel all the way up. And also with college softball too, it seems like the girls are chanting, and it just seems like they're having a lot more fun. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. College baseball is great, but it just seems like softball, you're having a little bit more fun.
I would agree. It does seem like that for the majority of the time.